All right, so this is for Nick Partin, and it's kind of the biggest one I've ever critiqued as far as a whole, and it's a work in progress. So he's got a lot of places to work on here. From a whole canvas point of view, the first thing that I would say is that you want to kind of match the values of the skies. You've got right now, as it stands, your center focal area is these two pieces right here. Let me grab. I'm just gonna find a weird color here. So these two pieces here are are a center focal area that you want to really pay attention to, and everything else is kind of spread out. But what I feel though is, and I know you've got a lot of unfinished yet going on here, but what I think you should do is match the value points between the blues and the grays. If you notice here, the darks on this side are really closer to the black point of view, and the lights are significantly brighter. They're about 20% brighter. And so by doing this, what I would tell you to do, oops, let's just erase this. Ooh, there we go. Okay, so by doing so, what I would say is that you want to almost create a darker value point up here, and watch those highlights. I would go down here like this. Let's just gradient this out here. Um, Oops, I know that. There we go. And let's go gradient tool here. So I would definitely take some of these darks here and just kind of slowly paint something like that. And let's multiply here. And so by doing so, what I'm doing is I'm darkening the sides and creating more of a darker value point. And it focuses in on this. The other thing that you want to pay attention to, now this is zooming up. Let's just put in 18.5. Okay. So the other thing you want to start doing is it's really hard to tell what's going on here. Between the lightning and all that type of thing, you want to, I think less is more in this case. It's so busy and so chaotic as it's going on, as you look at this entire scene. Just me scrolling across here, you've got you know a lot of characters built in here, and a lot of things going on. You've got your looks like all World of Warcraft characters, Azrael, different types of things like that. Um, I think some StarCraft. I'm not too familiar with all those, but you're looking at all these scenes that are going on. There's just a ton of information, and it's too much. And I think the first thing that you need to do is kind of separate your foreground and backgrounds a little bit. And so what that means is, looking at this, let's go in here and start by grabbing, your characters in the foreground here. So we're just gonna zoom in here. So your characters, define what characters you have in the foreground, and define what characters you have in the middle ground, and define what characters you have in the background. And I think that's going to be a huge aspect of what you want to deal with. So looking at it, I would say right off the bat is you'd have, and I'm just going to rough these out really, really horribly rough. But you have probably, let's grab this guy here, and I'm just going to really quickly grab some of these here. And again, watch your scale, that type of thing. So these being cut in the foreground, I'm just going to copy that out. And then these guys in the background, um, like you started doing it here. And I think that's much more like much more what you want to do on everything else. You want to have that foreground, middle ground, background going on. Because when you start having everything the same vibrant hue, the problem you have is everything kind of looks on the same plane. And so if I simply, let's just grab about this here, what I would tell you to do is just simply start by, and I'm just going to do this in hue and saturation, see if we can grayscale this out. So let's slowly lighten up some of this here. Actually, copy, and let's slowly lighten up. Come on here. There we go. Just got to be on the right layer here. Let's do this a little bit here. There we go. Okay, let's try this again. Let's copy this. And so this character here, simply desaturating him. One, giving him a little bit lighter presence, a little bit more desaturation, something like that. And it's going to start setting these characters in the background, your different planes. So I would work as each one goes. Especially something like this here. It's very strong and very bright, but it seems like it's on the same plane as your major background characters. And so simply by going in and going into the saturation, and let's lighten that up a little bit, and let's desaturate that a little bit, as well as some of your background, you're now pushing that further in the background. And I think that's kind of a big aspect where you've got everything, all these dark colors, except for the one main figure that you have, which are your demons in the background. And I think simply by adding in more variance in the background foreground elements, you're going to get a much better picture. And the other thing is, I get you're trying to kind of give each element to each scenery here. But again, pay attention to what your scenery is. Start by, what I would do is let's go here, add this. What I would do is, one of the things that you want to do is you can accent certain elements. You can kind of start taking some of this stuff and kind of pulling out what you want to show. So let's go here, and we can start pulling out. And you see how just pulling out some of that really accents the body, the character, things like that. And so those are things that you want to do. See here with the wings coming out forward, just by taking some of that gradient out, now I'm getting a sense of different layers. And I think that's where you want to go is that. And on top of that, like, you've got your individual scenes here. But from a standpoint of creation, what I would say is interact them a little bit more. So you've got these two right here. How can you interact them a bit more? And this sword here feels a little bit awkward. It's held out at a weird angle, and so you want to elongate this sword and have it hold it by your side. So you want to define your categories here as a kind of set scene. So you want this to be a scene. You want this to be a scene. You want this to be a scene. So every section is a elemental cohesion thing that you want to have happen. And so by doing that, by putting these elements together, you're now getting more of a sense of what's going on. And also think about foreground elements. Like, these characters here are very small and very tiny, but to be honest with you, it speaks volumes on what they should be. So in all reality, what I would do is enlarge them even further. These elements in the background that are kind of forethoughts, like, they're not really doing anything, you want to have them, be entertained together. Just having them float there doesn't help the situation. So those are definitely things that you want to kind of work with and deal with. Um, and so, as I said, it's about your different elements. Like you've got some really cool stuff going on, uh, but the problem is it all feels like separate entities. Like this character here feels completely separate from this character. This character is just standing here. This is standing there too, standing there. Um, this guy is attacking. It looks like this guy here, but because they're on the same plane, and they're the same value and they're the same kind of feeling, I don't get a sense of separation. I get this sense that they are as one creature, and so that's kind of causing me issues when I look at it. You want to separate your elements to some extent so that they're easily read. So this is an element, and then bring this other guy up here and dull him down a little bit so that he's a separate element. Um, Give me some motion lines too, or some type of magic or power or blood or something that separates them. So those are different elements too, and try overlapping elements, especially like this character here. Let me just merge this without my lines here. And so looking at like this character here, I'm just gonna really rough this out again. And simply taking this and transforming him and overlapping him, now you get a sense of unity, and it's pretty simple. Um, it's pretty simple, but you have that sense of how things belong together now. As before, you had two separate entities, and this way, you've got kind of that look and feel of how things kind of fit together. That overlapping really helps. Um, And so again, same thing here. These guys here, I'm just going to really rough this out. Um, let's brighten them up and let's take out some of the saturation. And now they feel more in the background. And you could even overlap some more elements as they layer in the background. Again, like I said, this to me is kind of the most important part of the scene, but it's so small that simply transforming it larger gives it much more priority in the scene now. And even adding these guys as a smaller element, all right. And I would personally, what I would do is I would add less lightning. Especially with the way your kind of scene goes, I would think if you add in less of this lighting element here, and I'm just going to rough this in real quick here. And then add in more longer streaks of this lightning. And I'm just, again, playing around. With it not so chaotic and not so implemented as this cluster, now you're separating the elements. And then again, the other thing is here they don't feel like they're interacting. And I understand you've got your wizard up here, casting a spell or doing what it needs to do. But again, it just feels like floating elements. Have them interact, have them fighting, have them battling, things like that. And all of that reason, and I'm focusing more on the left side because it's more finished, versus the right side because you still have a lot of elements that you need to color and draw and stuff like that. But by pushing those elements out, by putting that in there, you're starting to see that these elements start taking more effect, and even these subtle changes that I'm doing, help interact the scenery a little bit more. All right, I hope that helps.